Hey everybody, this is Ricky from Delta Sound Labs. Thanks very much for agreeing to test our new devices. We're going to be releasing our texture trio this week. It consists of Sine Delay, a monophonic synthesizer, Gramulator, a granular synthesizer audio effect, and Risset, a Risset tone-based filter. We'll start with Sine Delay. It's a monophonic synthesizer that allows you to modulate between a sine wave and a square wave. You can synchronize that transition to the tempo of your live set using the sync button, or you can use the pulse button on the left hand side of the user interface to activate and control a free running metronome. To drive the instrument, you're just going to be using regular MIDI note data, so any pitch data will do from your MIDI controller or a MIDI clip. Just a reminder, it is monophonic, so we don't have multi-voice support in here because we feel like it's a pretty complex instrument as it is. But if there is a desire for polyphony, then that's something we can definitely implement. But for now, it's monophonic. The velocity of your MIDI notes will control the feedback of a 4-point interpolation delay line. That's pretty useful because you can have like kind of momentary captures and feedback based on where your MIDI notes are placed, which is pretty cool. Also, if the feedback level is at 100% or velocity of 127, rather than getting a hard clip output, you actually get this really nice tan H distortion, which is much smoother. So you can create some pretty nice textures with some grit to them, but not too jarring. So that's Sine Delay. Let's hear what it sounds like. Next we have Gramulator. Gramulator is a 2-grain granular synthesis engine or audio effect. It's going to continuously granulate any audio input. Each grain is assigned to one of these channels of your stereo audio output. You can change the pitch or speed at which the grains are read, either an octave below or an octave above. You can also change how the grains, or rather where the grains are read in the array. So the position fader is essentially controlling a phaser that reads through a buffer or an array. So the more central it is, the closer it'll be to freezing on a particular sample. If it's at the far left, it'll be reading them backwards. If it's at the far right, it'll be reading the grains forwards. You can also clear the buffer if you don't like what you've captured using the clear button. All right, let's hear what it sounds like. It's going to increase the velocity values of my MIDI notes here, which will in turn increase the feedback of the delay line. This will in turn give the Gramulator audio effect more to play with. So lastly, we have Risset, which is a filter audio effect based on the phenomenon of Risset or shepherd tones. So we have a series of cueable frequency bands that are constantly moving through the frequency spectrum and wrapping around at both ends. So you have this kind of continuous glissando effect or auditory illusion that you have a continuous tone that's never ceasing to ascend. We have the ability to synchronize this process to the live set, much like the other devices, or you can run again like a freestanding metronome using the speed fader. The cue fader controls the cue of each of those bands. You can clear the filter buffer if it captures or produces any artifacts that you don't like. You can invert the direction using the invert bang button. And you have a low and high pass filter in there, which are currently configured in series. There's no crossover frequency, but we'll implement a crossover for the final version. And that's pretty much it. So, and visually, it's actually kind of interesting to look at too. So let's hear what that sounds like in combination with the other two. Okay, so that's it for the trio. The last bit of news we have then is in regard to Helmholtz, which is our pitch follower or tracker. We stripped this back because it was pretty complex for the first round. It now does one thing really well. It doesn't have the notes mode in it anymore, so it's not producing any kind of MIDI pitch information. It's really only producing control data, which you can use to control an oscillator, which I'll demonstrate in a minute. You'd be better off thinking about it as producing like CC messages rather than MIDI pitch information. So if we work from the left hand side of the UI to the right, we have input sensitivity to allow you to calibrate your instrument relative to the device. We have lin and log modes for the eventual output. Linear is going to be more useful for parametric control of things like pan and volume. Log is going to be much more useful for things like the fixed oscillator and the operator instrument, for example. Presets will adjust the range of the scaling output, but you can configure that manually if you like. You can save your presets, you can load in the last preset that was saved. Smoothing is used to linearly smooth out the eventual output. It's basically just some linear smoothing inside of Max. And the map button is using the API to allow you to map to one parameter at a time. So you're not going to hear me sing, thankfully, but you are going to see the output in this demo video. You just need to add a new track. We'll add operator, and then we'll add in a MIDI clip that's just continuously playing a note. Because the general idea here will be that we'll use pitch to control the frequency of a fixed oscillator. And then we're going to map the output here by clicking on the map button. And we'll go to the freq parameter there. And you'll notice that, as I'm talking, it's tracking and controlling the frequency of the oscillator.